Hey everybody, welcome back to this magic room, which started out as 50 conversations with 50 strangers, but grew exponentially because it seems like there's something mysterious in people's minds about having a conversation with a stranger. I didn't really understand what it was. I was told when I finished writing the book over my left shoulder, the Mosaic, to go out on the road and do what Mo, the main character in the Mosaic, did. He was on a quest to find heaven because his parents passed away when he was a kid, and the adults told him that his parents were in heaven. So he set out in that moment to find that place called heaven. But the people he met along the way weren't the people you would imagine. They weren't the gurus and the ministers and the priests and the shamans and the Aborigines elders and the holy men and women. They were common, ordinary people. They were the homeless man and the street worker, the blind woman and the juice man, the gardener and the waitress. And he wondered, why am I sitting with people like this? Why am I sitting with these guys? Why would these people don't seem like they can tell me anything about heaven? But what happened is every time he had a conversation with them, every time he just sat there and listened to what they said, what they told him, what they shared with him, made him completely revamp the view that he had of them. He went in thinking they were one person. After the conversation, they became another. And when that happened over and over and over and over and over again, he started to realize, boy, I don't see anything the way it is. I see everything the way I am. I wonder what else in my life I don't see the way it is. Is there anything that I see the way it is? Or is everything just run through this filter of my eyes and my belief systems and who I am? And in that moment, he looked over to his right and he saw a monk unzipping the sky. And the monk invited him to come through into a parallel reality where he met the wise one who was the keeper of the Mosaic, who was arranging all of the pieces of the Mosaic in the world around him. This show is sponsored by the Mosaic. My sponsor is now going to be very happy with that. They'd be happier if you went to Amazon and bought it. I would be happy if you went to Amazon and bought it, only for the reason of what I discovered in writing the Mosaic and really in my life is the heaven I was seeking then wasn't a place with a guy with a much better beard than mine who looked better than me and had a big G on his sweatshirt. It was rather that moment where we perceive something all the time the same way. And there's a perceptual shift that allows us to see it entirely different. To me, that's the heavenly moment that I was looking for. That chance to see the world differently than I was seeing. And the underlying theme of the Mosaic isn't just connection. It's about nothing is as it seems. So because I couldn't go out on the road, I had my whole trip planned. I was going to go out on the road and do it. And 11 days before I was to leave, COVID came and we were locked down. So I said, oh, great. Now what am I going to do? And I decided to take the trip virtual. I decided to go to all different continents. I'm sitting today with Lilith, who is in Austria. And I've been in every continent in the world in this little beautiful room. And what seemingly happens in this room is when people feel loved and accepted, listened to and heard, acknowledged and validated, everything they are not falls off. And all that remains is who they are. And in some cases, people themselves only see themselves in this room for the first time. Most of the time, that's not true, but the time that it is true is amazing. And even in the times where people come in knowing who they are, something often happens in this room that made me think the room was magic. But there's nothing about the room that's magic. It's an empty room. What's magic is what happens here in this interaction. So it is with honor and privilege that I welcome Lilith Moon into this room, into this conversation. Lilith, if I didn't say your name correctly, please tell us who you are and what you do. Because I tried, but I don't think I got it quite right. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you so much, Daniel. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Lilith Moon. And I Who am I? I guess I'm a human being, right? Half earth, half sky, like we all are. Should I get more specific than that?
You can stay wherever you want. This is your time to do what you want. But let me just pause for a minute. Listener, as Lilith,
Lilith.
Lilith.
You can
Say
say Lilith. It's what most
Lilith.
English-speaking people
Okay.
do.
As Lilith is speaking, think, how would you define yourself? She chose to define herself as half earth, half sky. Is that how you would define yourself? If someone asked you, who are you? What would you say? Okay. Keep telling me who you are.
Yeah, I guess that was a very shamanic perspective to start off with, and that's who I am. I'm a modern day shaman, and I'm a holistic business coach and the creator of Shamanic Yoga. I'm also a mother and a traveler and a lover of life.
Beautiful. And if you were to peel even that layer off, who are you behind what you do and the obligations you have?
I guess I'd go back to the answer that I said before. I'm half earth and half sky.
and tell us for people who don't get that, tell us what that means.
Yeah, so this is one of the fundamental it's not even a theme, but realities that we deal with in shamanism. It is the best way for me to describe what I mean by that is if you imagine the tree of life. You have this beautiful tree, and the roots grow down into the earth, right? And this is sort of like the lower world. It is our subconscious. And then you have the tree trunk, and that is what we normally, what we see, what we can touch. This is our normal, ordinary reality. And then you have the branches, and they reach into the sky, and this is the superconscious. This is where we connect to the divine, to everyone and everything else in the universe. And that's basically who we are as human beings. We are souls, right? We are this divine spark, but we are incarnated in a body. So we are of the earth and of the sky. And I just love that. And another way to describe that, to make it even clearer, would be to look at our chakra system, at our energy centers, because they are the perfect analogy. Like we have the 3 lower chakras: root chakra, sacral chakra, and solar plexus chakra. And they are really the earthly existence, right? They are what keeps us earthbound. And then we have the upper 3 chakras, which is the crown chakra and the third eye chakra and the throat chakra. And they are what links us to the heaven. And we have the heart chakra, which is where they meet, right? Which is the connection point. And that's it, right? We are half earth, half sky. And that's what's so beautiful about this existence here on earth, that we can be, and we can learn to be the souls that we are, and we can enjoy everything that being incarnated in a body gives us access to.
I love that. I was remembering as you were speaking that even as a kid, when they asked me who I am and what I did, I said, I am someone who has my head firmly in the clouds and my feet firmly on the ground. And I never knew that was a shamanic interpretation. So it's interesting to see how that all. What makes you happy?
So many things. What makes me really happy is being with my son, laughing with him, playing with him. Just had an epic sword fight before I came onto this conversation with just packaging material. We're building a closet, and then we had this epic sword fight, and I was laughing so much. So my son is very much the light of my life. And then what else makes me happy? Traveling. I am a traveler. I've lived in so many different countries. I've traveled all over the world, and I just love it. Being in movement, getting to know different cultures, and like you said, seeing the world anew, like through the eyes of a different culture, and discovering new plants and animals. And animals make me really, really happy. As a shaman, obviously, I work with animal spirits, right, with power animals, but also, ordinary reality animals. I just love them. The other day I saw a baby hedgehog and he was just so not scared of me. He was just sitting there underneath the bush and he was eating something, and I was just mesmerized for 20 minutes. And then I realized that my hands were freezing off. I was just so happy watching him. That's really all I need. Yeah. Nature, my sun, my spirituality, that's really what makes me very happy, alongside singing and dancing.
Beautiful. And what would you say is most important to you?
My son and my mission.
Wow. So for those of us who are in the spiritual life, so often we hear this idea that everything that all of our happiness lives inside of us. And yet, when I ask you what makes you happy, what's important to you, and you're certainly a spiritual woman, you've talked about, this beautiful relationship you have with your son, which I have with my daughter also, which I completely get. But I wonder if you could shed some light on that place where our happiness comes from our interaction and the love we feel for our kids. And that place in ourselves that if everything was taken from us, we would still be happy. Would you be happy if everything that you're doing was taken from you? And it was just you alone?
I think that our world, the outside world, is a manifestation of who we are inside. So I think one is the other. Like, my son wouldn't be here if I hadn't had this inner wish to become a mother, even though I didn't consciously plan on becoming a mother, but I know that I have called him in. And so I think, you can't really separate that. It all comes from within, right? Like my mission. I didn't set out one day and was like, okay, I'm going to create a successful online healing business. I had struggles in my life. I overcame them. I found an incredible solution by combining shamanism and yoga. I wanted to help others with it. So it was also something that I've created from the inside out, right?
Yeah. So you gave reference a couple of times to the fact that these things just came to you because you were open to them. It wasn't your intention necessarily to have a son or to do your business. How did you hear those messages? How did that happen? How did you bring them in? And I want to put it under the context of, like, a lot of the work I do is helping people to learn how to listen. And so many people are searching for, what's my purpose? What's my dream? What's going to make me happy? What are the things what should I do in all these cases? But sometimes they're talking so much, it's hard for them to hear. It sounds like you had something happen where you were able to just call something in, and even if it wasn't what you wanted, you brought it to you. Can you speak of that a little?
Yeah, I would love to. It's a really good question. I think for me, it was a very unique thing that happened to me, because I was already doing yoga for a really long time, for like almost 10 years. And I found that, I was definitely on a spiritual path, but I was advancing pretty slowly, and my life was very stressful and chaotic and pretty dramatic even. And at some point, deeper into my
pause a minute, if you don't mind. Don't forget what you're going to say.
Yeah, I don't.
I want to go into that chaos, because I'm sure there are quite a few people, especially now we're recording, obviously, with COVID fatigue in everybody's mind. And I think there's a fair amount of stress. I think there's a fair amount of franticness. I think there's a fair amount. Can you explain to us that franticness and that chaos and that feeling that you were having before, that where you weren't progressing quite as quickly as you thought, but you were a spiritual person?
Yeah. It all started with my childhood, and I think that's where it starts for most of us, that we have certain wounds, that things happen to us, and then we carry those wounds. And the problem is that if we don't process them, then they come up as stress and fear and illness, and they come up so that we can then notice them and look at that wound, integrate that wound, and heal from that wound, so we can really get to the next level. But the problem is that this is not what we've learned, right? We've learned to think it's something outside. So I'm sick, well, I have to take these pills, right? Whereas of course it's not like that. I'm sick, so my body is telling me something, and if I listen, it will repair itself, right?
Yes.
So I think this is where it starts for all of us, that we are getting certain messages, be it in the form of illness or stress or fear, and we don't often we don't know what it means. So we panic, and then we go to the next authority we find, which for most people is a doctor, and they have no idea what's going on because they're just looking at the body. They're not looking at the mind, they're not looking at the heart, they're not looking at the soul. And that is ultimately why I didn't find my solution in yoga, even in yoga, right? Which already looks at the mind as well as the body, but it doesn't look so much at the heart and the soul. Or at least, not really. I mean, you have to go very, very deep. I did. I studied in India. I went deep, but not enough. And then I came across shamanism, and that was just my answer for everything.
Yeah.
Because
So
it is just...
So how did shamanism, because there are other people that are listening that would say, like, classic yoga, Vedantic yoga, isn't just about the body movements that the body makes. It's about the only reason we do yoga, according to ancient yoga philosophy that I studied, is to be able to still the mind and still the body, so that you could actually go deep within to feel that presence. How did shamanism open you? And I want to talk very personally, not from a we teacher point of view,
Mm-hmm.
but from a you point of view. Like, how did it open you, whereas yoga for you at that moment couldn't do that? What happened in there that you felt something that you had never felt before?
It's not so much about what I felt. It's more like with yoga, I had done it for 8 years. And from the start, my first yoga teacher already, when I was 18, she was not just about the body. I already learned like really advanced techniques from her. But the problem was that I was able to calm my mind completely. I was able to dive into eternal peace, but I did not get direct answers to my questions. I had so many questions, and there was nobody to talk to me in that feeling of peace. And that's what I wanted.
Pause. I love that. I love that. Okay, because for those of you who are listening, who are doing a practice and you're not getting answers to the many questions you have, I want you to listen now, because I want you to really hear. But even more than listening now to us in our conversation, what I want you to do is listen to the voices that are inside you. Because all too often there isn't somebody we can go to ask our questions to. But there is somebody that walks within us all the time that is speaking. That if we would only learn to listen to that voice when we still everything down and quiet everything down, the reason we're doing all that is so that we can hear this inner voice inside of us. And it doesn't mean because it's there we're going to hear it. Sometimes we have to go to another store or to another place or to another practice to do that. None of it is better or worse. I just want to know how that opened up for you, so that it come to you in a person, a teacher that you could talk to, that you could then ask questions and they would help you figure things through.
No, it didn't. It was very strange. So what happened was I used to work for the Red Cross in Austria, and I was in a management position, and I was leading a group of 12 other people in the Austrian countryside. And as I was driving there with the train from Vienna, where I lived at the time, to that countryside place where my team was awaiting me, I was in the train, and I had done some really intense fasting as part of my yogic practice before. And I was there with my boyfriend, and all of a sudden, like, he was coughing so much. He's a smoker. He was coughing so much. And I was just like, oh my God, that sounds terrible. And he was supposed to be my partner in leading this team. I was like, what are we going to do about that? This is going to be so intense. I can't do this alone. And I wanted to help him. So I put my hand on his chest. And I didn't even, I hadn't, helped anyone heal before, nothing of the sort. But I did that. And all of a sudden, like I could feel this intense rush in my hands, and I could feel this energy going into my hand and in my chest, and then I had his cough. And that was crazy. So that was obviously not textbook healing at all. And I also hadn't meant doing it. But he all of a sudden didn't have a cough anymore. He could really feel it. He was like, what's going on? And I was so distressed because that cough was intense. And I was like, what just happened? And then a voice started talking to me in my head. And now I know it was my higher self. But at that time, I had no idea. And I was really freaking out. I was on that train. It was full of people. I couldn't go anywhere. I think this is why it happened on a train, because I couldn't distract myself. And I just went into the hallway of the train and I sat down, and I was just like, head in my hands. I was just breathing, and the voice kept talking. And the voice kept talking and said, it's going to be okay. Your calling isn't to become a writer. I studied literature. I wanted to become a writer all my life. You're still gonna write, don't worry, but you are a healer and you're going to meet your next teacher very soon. And before that, you're gonna go through a big initiation process. And I was like, what? And in the middle of leading that 12 group, that group of 12 people, in the middle of that, my initiation happened. I had such a strong call one day to leave everyone. It didn't make sense at all. Drive up a mountain. And then I walked straight up that mountain. I had cuts all over my body. It was crazy. I didn't have water with me. Nothing. And I went up there. It was summer below. Up there, it was like 5 degrees. It was freezing. And I spent the whole night out in the open, and I was hot. I was just glowing with some kind of energy. And I had a near-death experience. My second one of many. First one was when I was a child. And this voice said to me again that I could go now if I wanted to, or I could stay. And that's the first moment when I saw my son, and I knew I was going to be a mother, and I decided to stay. And then I had another really intense initiation, and then I was led to India. I left everything. I left my apartment, my job, everything, and I went to India, and I did a yoga teacher training. And I had been told I would find a teacher, right? So I was expecting, well, it was going to be one of those gurus there, right? But it wasn't. There was another woman at the training who was also a student. She was a shaman, and she came to me and she said, I've been told by spirit that I was supposed to teach you. And during the yogic teachings, she started to teach me shamanic journey. And that's how it all started.
Wow. Wow. So in my language, I talk about things in a mosaic. And I talk about all these pieces that are connected to pieces that connect to other pieces. And that if we were just open to the connection, sometimes those pieces can surround us and protect us and block things from coming in or going out. But if we allow those pieces to be tunnels or bridges or just clear pathways so that we can get to all the other pieces that are one piece away from us, we start to open up. And each piece gives us something. Like you went there to go to yoga thinking your teacher, I was another student. And I mean, I love the connection that's possible when we're open to the connection that's possible.
Yeah.
What allowed you to be open to that connection?
Courage. I've always been a courageous person. I've never been afraid of anything. And I think that is really in my life why so many paths have opened for me at such a young age, because I don't hesitate. When I know something is right, I do it, and I don't care what anyone else says or what it takes. I just do it.
Have you ever thought you knew something was right, but it wasn't right?
I don't think so. Like I always, even if some experiences are difficult, I always know that they're the next stepping stone that I need to get to where I'm supposed to get to.
So talk to us about that place where there is a knowing that you know beyond any shadow of a doubt is wrong or right. It just is. And that's what has to happen. I know oftentimes I'm speaking to people and people that I've just met, and I'll just feel something and I'll just fight with myself and I'll say, it's just, I can't say that to them. That's not, I don't know them well enough to say any of this, and I'm not going to do it. And the voice will just get louder and louder. And now I don't do it as much. I don't fight it as much because I know that it's real. But when you hear that inner calling, when you hear that voice, there's something that distinguishes it of just, this is what has to happen right now. Can you speak of that a little bit?
Yeah, I think for me, this voice just comes from my heart. I just feel it, you know. And it's almost overwhelming. There's nothing really I can do to not do it or say it. It takes over. I don't have a choice, really, you know.
So, and I want to be very cautious because some people think listening might think, oh my God, she's possessed or something comes into her, right? But it isn't possession, right? I just want to make sure, right? It's
No,
not
it's
at all
not.
that.
It's just overwhelming. It's my inner knowing, you know, that is just so overwhelming that I just know what I need to do and how I need to do it and when I need to do it, and I just do it. So most of the time I you know, I've stopped trying to figure things out with my mind. I don't do that anymore.
Yeah. And for those of us who are listening, we all give lip service to the fact that the power of love is stronger than the power of anything else. But then when it happens and it overpowers us, we sort of get scared of it a little bit sometimes and think, oh, we're possessed or what's this or what's happening or all what. But none of that is true. It's just the power of when you know, when you are attuned and aligned with who you are, the energy just is, it's free and it moves unobstructed. Do you feel the world listens well? Do you feel people in the world listen well?
Do you mean like as in the whole world or in
Yeah, I
my
mean, just
world?
in general, do you feel that we are a world of talkers or listeners?
I guess generally speaking, most people are talkers, but I don't really like to talk much about general things because I can only speak about my own world, right? The people I attract, the people who make my world. And in my world, everybody is pretty amazing, very courageous, and even if it's difficult, you know, they're ready to listen. That's pretty much the experience that I make with the people around me, which is wonderful. And of course, not everyone. When I look at my family, sometimes I'm very sad
Yeah.
that I can't help them in the same way I help my clients, right? But that's the way it is. All we can do is help those who we can best help and focus on them.
Do you think you're a good listener?
It depends on the situation, I would say. I definitely listen to spirit a lot. I'm good at that. When it comes to people, it depends on who talks to me. I can be a very good listener, and there's other people who I have no patience for.
The people you have no patience for, why do you have no patience for them?
Because they're not the right people for me. And I know that if I engage my energy with them, I will lack energy for the people who I can really help. You only have so many resources as a human being, right? So you need to be able to protect your energy well so that you can serve in the place where you can be the most effective and help the most people.
That makes total sense. And I'd like to ask you a question. What if that weren't true? What if it weren't true that you only had so much energy and you had to preserve your energy for the things that you have? What if you actually had unlimited energy and the thought that we only have so much energy keeps us very safe and protected from actually going beyond the places where we feel comfortable listening?
I absolutely know what you mean. I definitely know what that feels like when I'm in the shamanic realm and when I experience myself as love and light and unlimited. So I know that this is a part of who I am, but there's also the part of me that is in the body and that needs food and sleep and water and that has a sun. And I just know that I need to focus my awareness, my attention where it is most needed. So I really have very clear priorities in my life. And I think that's very good. That's how I've gotten so far so soon because
Yeah,
I know, you know, I know what to focus on.
yeah. I want to ask the listener to jump in here and just ask, where do you sit? Where do you sit on this pendulum of of availability? What what we're talking about is so obviously important, of creating certain boundaries for yourself so that you can maintain and protect your energy and give your energy to the ones that are most important to you and not lose your energy on people that just want to take your energy from you. And not but, and there is this thought that happened to me in writing the Mosaic. I wrote the Mosaic and it took me 3 years to do it. I thought it would take 6 weeks. because I kept writing what I wanted the characters to say, and they were my characters. I had created them. But my characters wouldn't allow me to write what I was saying because it wasn't what they wanted to say to me. And I kept fighting it. And I was a little bit, not to say this is what you are, I'm just talking now very personally. I was a little bit of a snob. I only wanted to meet with people. I only wanted to be around people that were high energy. I wanted to meet with people that were open and were ready to see the world. I wanted to meet with people. I only wanted to eat in restaurants where the vibration of the food was high. And I wrote a book about the common ordinary people, which is so exactly the opposite of who I was in that moment. And what the Mosaic said to me is that when you take the time to sit with people and just listen to them with no desire to teach, to learn, to do anything, when you come into the room and you're just agendaless, what you will hear will blow your mind, because it will be from the trash man that you will hear something you could never hear from somebody who you think is right on par with you. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I totally agree that is definitely possible. I have these kinds of amazing conversations also with taxi drivers and, fruit sellers. And yeah, I definitely agree that is true. And that's not what I meant when I said, this is not the people who I give my attention to. I love doing that. I meant in my work, like I'm very clear who I can work with because, I want to help people in very big ways. So I know who I can help and who I can't help. And I have to be honest with those who are just not in the right place for me to help them. Because I tried to do the opposite before of just wanting to help everybody, and I ended up dispersing my energy and not really helping anyone. So I had to be very clear on that. But I didn't mean like from a general human standpoint. I'm very open to meeting all kinds of people and having beautiful conversations with all kinds of people.
I'm so happy I asked, because that's the feeling that I got from you, and I thought that I thought it came across differently than that, so I'm happy we were able to clarify it. Why is it so important for you to help people?
Because I know what it's like when you don't get the help that you need, and it's a pretty dark place.
So this is something that I'm personally going through right now. And I'll just share it with you, just not to challenge you or do anything, but just to put it out on the table. I'm 65 years old. I've spent most of my life helping people. And I thought I lived a very purposeful life. I thought that, that's what I was here for. I was here to be helped and help and like lift up and be lifted up and lift up along with. And when I wrote the Mosaic, it introduced to me the possibility of a different type of reality. And that reality was no longer a vertical reality where we help each other or we lead each other or we guide each other. But the Mosaic is a horizontal reality where just by coming together and loving each other and being with each other, something happens that's greater than any one of us could ever do. And I realized the modality for me in my life I was being asked to shift from that guy who wants to help everybody to that guy that just wants to hold the space to be with people and love them and sort of listen to them, hear them, understand better what they're thinking. I don't really know how it manifests in terms of monetization. I don't know how I live anymore. I don't know how that all happens, but somehow it does all happen. And I'm just interested in that vertical reality versus horizontal reality, because you seem wise for a soul that's sitting here as a wise soul. Do you have any thoughts on a horizontal reality replacing a vertical reality?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that I really love what you're doing in your work. That is really such a beautiful project, because I really do feel that that's what's needed in the world right now. This is what creates healing, for people to just be seen and heard. And, for them to realize that it's okay to love themselves just as they are. And I resonate a lot with what you said, because this is, I help in different ways, but one of the ways is to just hold space for people. That's
Yes.
a lot of my work, right? I have a women's circle, and in those, I call them sharing sessions, women come and some of them talk directly about what I'm teaching them, right? But others just come because they're having a bad day and they want, for someone to listen to them and see them. And often it's enough to just talk about it. And then they cry or they laugh or both of it, and they feel so much better. And that's a big part of what I do. I just go quiet and I hold space and I become present with them. And a lot of the healing happens just there.
Yeah.
And the beautiful thing is that there's a whole bunch of other women also present, and it just magnifies that being seen and heard and acknowledged and loved. That is just magnified because it's not just me. So that's wonderful, and that's one of the things that I do. And I definitely think it's both, right? We have this ascension process, and we also need to live in the present moment, which is how I understand the horizontal reality. Like we just have to be where we are now without thinking about where we're going. And the coolest thing about it is that the more present we can become with each other and with ourselves in the here and now, the faster we go up also, right?
Yeah. So for me, a horizontal reality is where nobody teaches and nobody learns, and everybody teaches and everybody learns, because we just come together and hold each other. And by the very nature of just two pieces coming together, we don't have to talk too much. We don't have to teach too much. We don't have to show too much. The very nature of the connection between one piece and another piece just makes us better, bigger, better, different than we were before. And there's something in that connectivity that allows people to see differently. Remember, my heaven is that perceptual shift that happens when we see something this way, and suddenly now we see it. As soon as you and I hold each other and are connected to each other, we see each other differently. And that shift happens without words. It happens without teachers. It happens without. So I'm just interested in your thoughts on that.
I completely agree. This is part of what happens, right? But just when you meet someone in whatever space that is, both are changed. And sometimes there's no words, sometimes there's many, sometimes there's, it's just energy. So you are changed by everyone that you meet. And I don't, I see myself, yes, of course, I teach the women who come to me something, but they teach me also. That's very apparent to me all the time. It's like we come into each other's lives to mutually support each other, and that can happen in so many different ways. And I can see it in the rituals that I hold, that sometimes we're just silent with each other. In the last new moon ritual that I held, we were just silent with each other for 20 minutes. You wouldn't believe all the stuff that happened. Everyone afterwards was like moved to tears, because the most beautiful things happen, different for each one, but possible because we came together and each one brought their energy into the space.
I love that. Talk to me, if you would, about silence and what it means to you.
Oh, silence. I love it so much now. And this was one of the hardest things for me on my yogic path, because that's what I found the most difficult. It happened sometimes. I found silence. And from silence, you open up this incredible inner space where you can feel yourself as part of the whole universe, and you can just be. And there's nothing else is needed. And you can just be in that feeling, and then hours can go by, and it's just wonderful, right? But that was difficult for me just with yoga, and shamanism has made it a lot easier, because on the shamanic journey, the mind is just not present. And so it's a lot easier to drop into our feelings. When the mind is calm, you listen to the shamanic drum, reminds us of our mother's heartbeat in the womb. There is this oneness that is already there just from the beat of the drum. And then from that space, it is so much easier to dive deep into yourself, because you feel safely held. And you're not scared anymore of becoming quiet. You're not scared of all of that stuff coming out. You feel safe. And then, when we first start doing this kind of practice where we sit in silence or we just listen to drums, then first comes the uncomfortable stuff, right? If we haven't done this before, then comes everything that we've pushed away so far. And it can be really uncomfortable. But the beautiful thing is, if we can sit with it, if we can be with it, if we can just continue to breathe and be, it will pass very quickly. And we've made a huge step towards our healing process just right there, just in that silence. And that is so beautiful, because then when that space is cleared, then we have access to this amazing feeling of wholeness, being whole in ourselves and being one with everyone and everything else in the whole universe. And that is just priceless. We need to find our way back to that, which is why shamanic journeying for me is the key to everything, because it just is a way for us to understand energy. And we all are energy, right? Everything is energy. And when we understand, then we can also, it's not an understanding with the mind, right? It's an embodied understanding. And then all the questions are answered, right? You have your spirit guides, you know where to find them. You can ask your higher self. There's literally no question that remains unanswered. And then underneath all the questions, you come back to just being, and you find out that you had all the important answers all along. And that's the beauty of it for me.
What scares you?
I think the only thing in the whole world that really scares me is losing my son.
What excites you?
Oh my goodness, so many things. Like my business excites me every day. I just, love being creative and finding out new ways of helping people and listening to what people need and letting spirit flow through me and create amazing practices that fit those needs. And what else excites me? Traveling so much. Yeah. I'm moving to Bali now, and that excites me the most at the moment. I just so look forward to it.
Fabulous. It was interesting when you were talking about the silence. There's a lot of shamanic stuff that I didn't really realize happens without me even realizing it, that it's something that I'm practicing. Because when I was given this beautiful mission, so to speak, of listening to people, I went to my divine beloved and I said, surely you've got the wrong person. I mean, I talk a lot. Like, you must have somebody that can listen better than I to introduce this. And I started just laughing, and my divine presence was laughing with me. And they said, well, there's two reasons why we want you to do it. One is because we want you to learn to listen more by doing it. But two, the other thing is you have a way of telling stories and a way of speaking that allows the mind of people to get occupied. And when you occupy their mind with those stories, what happens is they forget that they're scared because their mind's occupied in the stories, and fear comes from the mind. And what happens then is you have open access to their heart and to their soul. And you can just love them with your heart and touch their heart. And you can love them with your soul and touch their soul without the interference of their mind. And that practice is so powerful. They said, you're actually a very good listener in that regard, because you just think it's listening with your ears. It's not. It's listening with your heart and your soul as well. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being you have no idea what it is, and 10 being your pictures in the dictionary when they say the word, tell me what place you exist in the quality of trust.
Can you elaborate on that question? I'm not sure I understand.
In other words, is it easy for you to trust or hard for you to trust?
You mean trust life?
Trust myself? All things. Trust your inner voice, trust people, trust lovers, trust those people that you don't want to listen to, those people you do want to listen to. Trust that the world has your back. Trust that you live in a benevolent world. Trust that you have every single place in the world we walk in either trusting it or fighting it or not trusting it. So 10. Wow.
Yeah, I'm a really trusting person. I always have been. Sometimes to my detriment, actually. Sometimes I trust too much, but I prefer it this way than the other way around. it's better to trust people and then be surprised sometimes than to doubt people, because the more you doubt people, the more you're going to be disappointed anyway, right? So I prefer to just trust, you know, no matter what. And the most trust I have in just that life is good, that things happen for a reason, that we are safely held in this existence, and you know, that we're just meant to be who we are. And that's just such a relief. I was fighting so long with, you know, not being able to love myself and not understanding many of the things that happened to me that were painful. And at some point, especially through the shamanic journeys, I just realized that it's all good. I might not always understand why things happen or why they are the way they are, but I trust that life is good, and also that everything always becomes better continuously. I have this fabulous saying on my mirror. It's like, my life gets more fabulous with each day. And I absolutely believe that.
I love that. So if you could go to that moment where you were fighting life and didn't trust it, and go one moment later where you decided you could trust it, what changed?
I think it was a gradual gradual healing process. I think it wasn't one moment, but I was basically so scared because my mother died when I was very young. And I had just the most perfect childhood you can imagine until I was 7. Then she got very ill. She was very ill for a year. I hardly saw her, and then she was dead. And me being the trusting person I was, I didn't for one second think that she would die. I always thought, no, she's going to get better. She's going to come home. And then she didn't. And my universe was really shaken at that point. And I was like, and in that moment, things just changed for me. And from then on, my life was very difficult for like 12 years, very difficult, a very dark place, because I didn't trust life. And then I had a relationship with a man, my first really serious one, where we were engaged. We'd been together for years, and he just continuously shoved my childhood wounds in my face. And that's when I had like one of my spiritual awakenings, where I was like, oh wow, this isn't, there's so much more going on here than this fight in this present moment, because this reminds me so much of losing my mother, this fight that we're having here. And that's when I started to dig deeper. And that's really when everything unfolded. I met my best friend, who is still my best friend now, 10 years later. And she came from a spiritual upbringing, and she gave me all those spiritual books to read. And yeah, I started doing yoga and everything. And it was a gradual healing process. I did a lot of inner child healing. That's also what I often start with my own clients now. And I continue to do that. Now my son brings up inner childhood wounds from time to time, and then I don't go looking at the fault with him, right? I go to myself, and I'm like, okay, where is my inner child that needs nourishing right now? And from that place, I can much better take care of my son as well. So I think this is what reestablished my trust in life, is inner child healing and shamanic journeying, where I realized even those most painful things, they're not definite. My mother is still here. A big part of her came back to me when my son was born. I felt this. I felt when he was conceived, I felt it. I thought of my mother so much, it was overwhelming. So there was just this certainty that life is so much more than meets the eye. And every shamanic journey I do, it reestablishes that fact that this is eternal. There is no end. And when there is no end, what can really be that tragic, right? Everything is energy. Nothing is ever lost. And that's when that trust was like really anchored into my heart and soul. And that's what makes me feel so safe, even in these crazy times that we're in right now.
Yeah. I think you would really love the Mosaic if you ever get a chance to read it or pick up a copy. I would love to get your...
I will definitely do that, because as you were talking about it, I had to think of my partner. I think we would both love it. And because he's that kind of person who constantly goes out looking for conversations with all kinds of people. Yeah. And his favorite story, and one of mine also, is The Alchemist. And it reminded me a little bit of that.
Yes, a lot of people compare it. I had never read The Alchemist when I wrote it. And then I went and I said, oh my God, this reminds me of the Mosaic. I mean, it was, it's such an honor for me to be even put in the same page, let alone paragraph or sentence. If you had one thing you would want to say to the world, and you knew the world was listening, not from your mind, not even from your heart, but from your soul, what would you want to share with a world that is in anguish, in glory, in pain, in love? What's one thing that you're listening, that your shamanic journey, that your example of your life has given you, that you would love in this moment to just hand over and give to somebody else? What would that be?
I would really encourage people to make finding their soul's purpose their most important thing in their life, that they really focus on it. Because, you know, when we have this conversation, many people might think, oh wow, this is just for a few elite people. But shamanic journeying, everyone can learn it. It is an innate faculty of our brains, right? It has developed on 5 different continents at a time where people had no means of connecting to each other. Our brains developed, we had this capacity. We can understand energy, we can travel energy, we can influence our lives, I really believe everyone has a soul mission, and that mission is different for everyone, but it starts with loving ourselves. And how can we do that if we are not aware of who we are? We need to understand ourselves from a soul perspective, and shamanic journeying enables us to do that. So that's what I would say to everyone. Learn shamanic journeying, because it's the most important thing you're ever going to do. It will change your life completely. I've seen it in myself, but I've also seen it in the hundreds of women that I've taught this to.
And if we're going to have all your contact information in the show notes and all the place for people to get in touch with you. What's the surefire way for them to get in touch with you if they want to learn more about how to do that from you?
I think the best place to be is my women's circle for women. I also privately work with men. In that case would be my website, but my women's circle is where the fun happens. It's where I really am showing up in a very authentic way, and I have live trainings every week, and it's a big circle. So women from all of the world come together to share and to be, which is so important, that we have safe places where we can just be who we are.
Lily, thank you so much for being here. I want to thank you for taking the time to share your beautiful heart with us and to share your journey with us. For those people who are listening, I want to thank you for coming and listening again to another episode. If you like what you've heard, what do we do when we like something? We tell people we like about the things that we like. Tell your friends to listen to this if you liked it. Share it with them. Give them the gift of what you just experienced. I want to close by saying that we didn't know each other at all before we had this conversation. And look how beautifully this conversation went. Look how open we were together. Look how much we talked about sacred things and holy things and personal things and beautiful things. And we might grow to think that people we don't know are strangers, and it's hard to talk to a stranger. I want to ask you, is that really true? It isn't hard to talk to a stranger. It isn't hard to listen to a stranger. The only thing that's hard is taking the first step to do it, and that's not even hard. So I'd like to invite each of you to go up to someone you don't know, whether virtually or in person, and just ask them, how are you? Without a desire to fix them or change them or help them or convert them or make them into something or show them the way. Just take the chance to sit there and listen to how they're doing. And just love and accept them. Listen to them and hear them. Acknowledge and validate them. What I'm struck by in every conversation that I have in this room, all different conversations, is how much people express their words or their life in different ways and different paths that they take, but how essentially connected I am to every single one of them. The Mosaic shared with me, and sometimes I don't even know why it's sharing with me. The process of connection is 4 steps. It's connection to self, connection to source, connection to purpose, and connection to others. And when we are connected to ourselves, and we love ourselves, and we're open, and then we know that there's something bigger than ourselves, and we become vulnerable to this idea that it's not just us in the world exists in a bigger space. And then we find our purpose in that bigger world. Then the connections we have with others can be really made up of those connections where Margaret Mead says that throughout all of time, the world is changed by a small group of people coming together. Is there one last thing you want to say before we go?
I want to say thank you. This was a really delightful conversation, and I'm really honored that I got the chance to be here with you in your presence. And I just want to send lots of love and light out to everyone, because these are intense times at the moment, but together we can get through this.
Absolutely, and the honor is all mine. So thank you for being here with us. Until the next stranger comes into this room, be kind to each other. Be kind to yourself. Love each other and love yourself. Until the next time, God bless.
Namaste.